Everything you know about the Illuminati is a lie, not a misconception, not a mistake, not an exaggeration, a lie. Deliberate, multi-layered, perfectly calibrated disinformation that has been crafted for over 2 centuries. Its purpose is not simply to hide the truth. Its purpose is to make you believe that no truth exists at all, so that at the mere mention of the word Illuminati, you picture ridiculous characters in cloaks, reptilians, or popular musicians making a triangle with their fingers for the camera. It is a shield of absurdity, erected with incredible skill. But any shield can be pierced. My name is the narrator. And over the next few chapters, you and I will do something that no one has done before. We will not be retelling dubious theories from the internet or quoting yellowed pamphlets. We will apply the most powerful analytical tool in existence to this historical myth, the Logos 7 system. We will feed it everything: historical archives, financial reports, political declarations, encrypted correspondence, and millions of pages of conspiracy literature. And we will allow a cold, impartial intellect to separate fact from fiction, signal from noise. Today we launch Protocol Mirage. Our task is to expose the first, most fundamental lie, the historical lie upon which all else is built. Prepare yourselves. The journey into the very heart of darkness begins right now. Let's start with the story they tell you in textbooks and documentary films, the official, commonly accepted version. May 1st, 1776, the Bavarian city of Ingolstadt. Adam Weishaupt, a young professor of canon law, a man of radical Enlightenment views, founds a secret society, the Order of the Bavarian Illuminati. The goals, at first glance, are noble: the perfection of humanity, the fight against superstition, the abuse of state power, and the influence of the church. The Illuminati, or the Enlightened, sought to create a new society based on reason, liberty, and equality. It sounds almost like the motto of the coming French Revolution, doesn't it? The order's structure was complex and hierarchical, largely mimicking the Masonic lodges into which the Illuminati actively infiltrated. Members used pseudonyms from ancient history. Weishaupt himself was Spartacus. His closest associate, Baron von Knigge, was Philo. They created a complex system of ciphers, rituals, and degrees of initiation. In a few years, the order grew, attracting famous scientists, politicians, aristocrats, and writers throughout Germany and beyond. Their numbers, by various estimates, reached 2,000 people. On the scale of 18th century Europe, this was a significant intellectual force. And then, just as swiftly as it began, their ascent was cut short. In 1784, the Elector of Bavaria, Karl Theodor, frightened by rumors of a conspiracy and under pressure from the clergy, issued an edict banning all secret societies. In 1785 and 1787, even harsher edicts followed, specifically targeting the Illuminati. Searches and arrests began. The authorities published intercepted correspondence of the order, portraying its members as dangerous conspirators. Weishaupt fled Bavaria and found refuge in the Duchy of Gotha. The order was disbanded, its members scattered and terrified. The end of the story. Officially, the Order of the Bavarian Illuminati existed for less than a decade and was completely destroyed. Period. It is at this point that most historians cease their investigation. But for us, this is only the beginning. Because this version, for all its neatness, contains critical vulnerabilities. We have loaded into Logos 7 all available archival data concerning the Order's activities and its subsequent dissolution. Government decrees, interrogation protocols, personal correspondence of members, and newspaper publications of the time. The system performed a cross-validation of the data and identified the first anomaly, a statistical anomaly. Logos 7 concluded that the probability of such a ramified, highly intellectual, and ideologically charged network disappearing completely and without a trace is less than 1%. A simulation conducted by the system shows that repression on this scale should have triggered a powerful backlash, a wave of underground publications, reorganization attempts, conspiracies. Instead, we observe an almost absolute, unnatural silence. This does not look like a defeat. It looks more like a perfectly executed deep dive operation, an order to go to ground. The order did not die. It simply shed its old skin, its Bavarian skin, and went into the shadows, leaving only a dead shell on the surface for the authorities. But why? Why fake its own death? The answer to this question brings us to the second stage of the Mirage's creation, to the birth of the great Illuminati myth. And here, two key figures enter the stage, whose works would shape our understanding of secret societies for centuries to come. The French abbot Augustin Barruel and the Scottish scientist John Robison. Both, independently of each other, published books in the late 1790s proposing a sensational theory. They claimed that the Illuminati were not destroyed. On the contrary, they had secretly infiltrated Masonic lodges across Europe, seized control, and become the shadow puppet masters who organized the greatest upheaval of that era, the French Revolution. It was their works that transformed a small Bavarian circle into an omnipotent force pulling the strings of kings and revolutionaries. It was they who created the image of the Illuminati conspirator that we know today. Their books became bestsellers, their ideas spread throughout the world, giving rise to the first global conspiracy theory in modern history. It would seem that this is the proof that the order survived and continued its activities. But here too, Logos 7 detects deception. We conducted a semantic and factual analysis of the works of Barruel and Robison. The system processed more than 4,000 pages of their texts, comparing every assertion with real historical documents. The verdict of Logos 7 was unequivocal. The works of both authors are not so much historical research as brilliantly written political pamphlets. They are full of exaggerations, unproven claims, and direct logical fallacies. The system's correlation analysis showed that the real connection between former members of Weishaupt's and the key figures of the French Revolution is statistically negligible. The vast majority of Jacobins and other revolutionary leaders had no connection to the Illuminati. So what was it? Were Barruel and Robison simply mistaken? A motivational profile simulation conducted by Logos 7 shows this is unlikely. Both were intelligent, well-informed men of their time. The system offers another far more disturbing hypothesis. Their works were not a mistake, but a deliberate information plant. They created the perfect enemy, a straw man. Why? To divert attention. The Great French Revolution was an incredibly complex process, caused by deep economic, social, and political reasons. To explain it as a conspiracy by a handful of Germans is a monstrous oversimplification. But such a simple explanation was very convenient for the conservative elites of the time, who were terrified by the revolution. It allowed them to ignore the real problems of society, blaming everything on the machinations of an external enemy. And here, we come to the essence of protocol, Mirage. The myth of the Illuminati conquering the world was beneficial to everyone. It was beneficial to monarchs and aristocrats to discredit the ideas of the Enlightenment and Revolution. It was beneficial to the revolutionaries themselves to frighten their opponents. But most of all, it was beneficial to the real power that stood behind the scenes. While the whole world was looking for sinister Bavarians in cloaks, the true architects of the new order could quietly do their work. The myth became the perfect smokescreen. But that was only the first layer of the mirage. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, this myth lived its own life, mutating and acquiring new details. The Illuminati were linked to the Rothschilds, to Karl Marx, to the founders of the United States. Their symbols, the all-seeing eye, the pyramid, the owl of Minerva, began to be found everywhere, from the dollar bill to the architecture of European capitals. The legend grew stronger, turning into a universal explanation for any war, crisis, or political assassination. And then came the digital age, the internet. And this is where a second, even denser layer of the mirage was erected. The Illuminati myth moved out of the offices of conspiracy scholars and became part of mass culture. It became a meme. Cheap entertainment. Now the Illuminati are not secret philosophers and politicians, but pop stars who have supposedly sold their souls to the devil for fame. They are lizard people from the planet Nibiru. They are the heroes of video games and Hollywood blockbusters. We tasked Logo 7 with analyzing the dynamics of Illuminati mentions in the media space over the past 20 years. The result is astonishing. The system revealed exponential growth. But a qualitative analysis shows that 99.9% of this content is overtly parodic, absurd, and discrediting in nature. Logo 7 calls this a strategy of informational noise. When the amount of absurd disinformation is so vast, any attempt at serious, fact-based research drowns in this flood of garbage. Anyone who dares to speak seriously today about a secret world government will be immediately ridiculed and branded a supporter of the reptilian theory. And this is the greatest triumph of those who stand in the shadows. They have created a self-defending system. They have turned the myth that threatened them into an inoculation, an anecdote, a weapon against those who tried to get to the truth. They have built a fortress whose walls are made not of stone, but of laughter and contempt. So, let's summarize. What have we established in this chapter with the help of the Logo 7 system? First, the historical order of the Bavarian Illuminati was real, but its official history is a falsification. It was not destroyed, but went underground, faking its own death. Second, the global myth of the Illuminati ruling the world and orchestrating the French Revolution was artificially created at the end of the 18th century. It served as a smokescreen, diverting attention from the real, far more complex and invisible processes of control. Third, in the modern era, this myth has been deliberately taken to the point of absurdity. It has been turned into an element of pop culture to discredit the very idea of a secret power's existence and to make any serious investigation impossible. We are facing a grandiose construction of lies, a historical fact wrapped in a political myth, which is in turn covered by a thick layer of cultural absurdity. This is protocol Mirage, and we have just breached its first level of defense. But if everything we've been told is a lie, where do we look for the truth? If popular conspiracy theories are also part of the deception, what can we rely on? Logos 7 gives a clear answer. We must look where lies are impossible, in a language older than any conspiracy, in the language of mathematics, finance, and symbols. The mirage is dissipating. We've cast aside the historical husk and the parodic camouflage. Now we are ready to see what they have so carefully hidden. In the next chapter, we launch protocol Semantic Network. We will analyze the symbols you see every day but do not understand their true meaning. We will expose the secret language used by those who truly rule this world. And what we discover, carved in stone on government buildings and printed on currency, will change your perception of reality forever. Do not miss it. It only gets harder from here, and more frightening. You think you see the world as it is? That is an illusion. Every day, you look at dozens, hundreds, thousands of symbols without realizing their true meaning. They are printed on the money you use to pay. They are carved in stone on the government buildings you walk past. They are embedded in the logos of the corporations whose products you use. You look, but you do not see. You perceive them as decoration, as part of a design, as a historical given. But that is not what they are. This is a language, a hidden language, not intended for you. In the last chapter, we breached Protocol Mirage. We established that the popular image of the Illuminati is a multi-layered disinformation campaign designed to conceal a real, active power structure. Now we must take the next step. We must learn to read their messages. To do this, we are launching Protocol Semantic Network. We have loaded terabytes of data into Logos 7. Images of architectural elements, heraldic signs, numismatic archives, corporate brands, and Masonic ciphers from the last 300 years. The system has analyzed these disparate elements not as individual pictures, but as a single, interconnected neural network of meanings, as a language. And today, you and I will learn its first, most important words. Let's start with the most famous and most misunderstood symbol in the world. If you can, take a $1 bill of the United States of America. On its reverse, you will find the Great Seal. On the left, an unfinished pyramid of 13 steps, crowned by a radiant triangle with an all-seeing eye inside. The official explanation sounds respectable and vague. The pyramid symbolizes strength and durability. The 13 steps, the 13 original colonies. The all-seeing eye is the eye of providence, a divine entity blessing the young nation. A beautiful fairy tale for the uninitiated. We tasked Logos 7 with conducting a structural, deconstructive analysis of this symbol, ignoring all official interpretations and comparing it with thousands of other esoteric and occult images. And this is what the system discovered. The key to understanding lies not in the individual elements, but in their relationship. First, the pyramid is unfinished. This is critically important. It is a symbol not of a completed fact, but of an ongoing process, a project, the great work, as alchemists would say. The construction of a new world order, as the Latin inscription below explicitly states, Novus Ordo Seclorum, not New World Order in the primitive sense understood by modern conspiracy theorists. Logos 7 provides a more accurate translation based on a semantic analysis of Virgil's poetry, from which the phrase is taken, a new order of the ages, or a new era. This refers to a fundamental restructuring of time and society itself, the creation of a new paradigm for human existence. Second, the capstone, the so-called pyramidion, is separated from the main structure. It hovers above it, shining, and it is within this capstone that the eye is located. This is the most important detail. Logos 7 interprets this unequivocally. The governing structure is not part of the system itself. The architects are not bricks in the building they are constructing. Those who possess true vision, the enlightened ones, are above the hierarchical structure of society, guiding its development but not mixing with it. This is a perfect visual representation of a shadow government. It does not occupy specific offices. It hovers above the entire system, invisible to those toiling at the base. Third, the eye itself. Its origin dates back centuries to the ancient Egyptian eye of Horus. But here, its meaning is reinterpreted. It is not just the passive observation of God. It is a symbol of active control based on comprehensive knowledge. It is an eye that not only sees all, but understands all. In the digital age, this symbol takes on an even more sinister tone. It is a symbol of total data collection and analysis, essentially what our own Logos 7 system does. Only our goals are different. We seek the truth. They seek the levers of absolute control. Thus, the Great Seal is not just an emblem. It is a declaration, a manifesto. It is the philosophy of a secret power compressed into a single image. We are building a new world order, which is a rigid hierarchy, and we, its architects, are above this system, controlling it through total knowledge. And all this is happening with divine approval, as they claim, Annuit Keptis. He approves of our undertakings. The only question is, who is this he? But the pyramid and the eye are just the tip of the iceberg. There are other, far less known, but no less important symbols in their semantic network. Let's turn to the symbol that was at the heart of Weishaupt's historical order, the Owl of Minerva. In ancient Greek mythology, the owl accompanied Athena, the goddess of wisdom. In Roman tradition, it became the companion of Minerva. It is a symbol of knowledge, erudition, and insight. Weishaupt himself and his closest associates used this image as the seal of the order. It seems logical for a society that called itself enlightened. But here too, Logos 7 uncovers a second, hidden layer of meaning. The system conducted a contextual analysis and found a key phrase that reveals the true philosophy of this symbol. It belongs to the German philosopher Georg Hegel, who lived shortly after Weishaupt but moved in the same intellectual circles. Hegel wrote, "The owl of Minerva takes flight only at dusk." What does this mean? It means that true understanding, wisdom, comes not before or during events, but only after them. When the day of history is over, when the chaos of battle has subsided, when all the players have made their moves, only then does the owl of wisdom arrive to survey the battlefield and understand what really happened. Now let's translate this into the language of power. The symbol of the owl is not just a symbol of knowledge, it is a symbol of knowledge that grants power over the future through the analysis of the past. It is the philosophy of those who do not participate in the daytime hustle and chaos of open political struggle. They sit in the shadows. They wait for dusk to fall. A crisis, a war, a revolution. And when everything collapses, when the old order is dead, they, possessing a full understanding of the situation, fly out of the shadows and begin to build a new world on the ruins. Their world, by their rules. This is not the philosophy of reformers. This is the philosophy of predators, patiently waiting for their moment. And this symbol has not disappeared. Logos 7 has traced its path through the centuries. We find it in the most unexpected places. For example, it is the unofficial symbol of the Bohemian Club, an exclusive men's club where the most influential people in the United States have gathered for over 150 years. Presidents, bankers, media moguls. Every year they meet in California's Bohemian Grove and perform rituals before a giant 40-foot statue of an owl. Officially, it's just harmless entertainment for men tired of power. But the correlation analysis of Logos 7 shows that the probability of a coincidental overlap between the symbolism of a historical order aiming for shadow world governance and the symbolism of the world's most elite and secretive club approaches zero. This is not a coincidence. This is continuity. So, we now have two powerful elements of their language. The pyramid with the eye, a symbol of structure and purpose. The owl, a symbol of method and philosophy. And now Logos 7 will show us how these symbols work together, forming that very semantic network. The system analyzed the architecture of key world capitals: Washington, London, Paris, Astana. And it discovered astonishing patterns. The layout of entire city districts, the positioning of key government buildings, banks, and memorials often form geometric figures in which these symbols are encoded. Pentagrams, hexagrams, straight lines connecting Masonic lodges to centers of financial power. The streets of Washington, D.C., designed by the Freemason Pierre L'Enfant, form a square and compass, the main Masonic tools. At the center of this symbolic web stand the Capitol building and the Washington Monument, a giant obelisk, an ancient Egyptian symbol of power and masculine energy. This is not accidental. This is architectural programming, the creation of a sacred space that constantly, on a subconscious level, transmits the ideas of its creators. Millions of people live and work inside these giant symbols, having no idea of their true meaning. They are walking on a game board, whose rules are unknown to them. The semantic network also permeates the corporate world. Logos 7 analyzed the logos of the 500 largest global companies. And again, the system found traces. Stylized pyramids, eyes, owls, rays of a rising sun. Another favorite Illuminati symbol signifying the dawn of a new era. They are present in the logos of media conglomerates, tech giants, pharmaceutical companies, and of course, banks. It is a kind of friend or foe identification system. Markers indicating membership in a certain club, a certain worldview. What does all this mean? It means we are dealing not with a long-dead Bavarian circle. We are dealing with a living, active, and incredibly powerful ideology that has for centuries woven its symbolic code into the very fabric of our civilization. It has encrypted its goals, its philosophy, and its structure in the things we look at every day. This semantic network performs three crucial functions. First, identification. The initiated recognize each other and see signs of their influence everywhere, which strengthens their belief in their own righteousness and power. Second, preservation of knowledge. Even if the organization is temporarily defeated, its key ideas will be preserved in stone and on money, so that future generations can read them and revive the cause. And the third, most important function, psychological impact. By being constantly in the field of these symbols, the masses subconsciously get used to the ideas of hierarchy, control, and an all-seeing eye. The symbols normalize the very idea that someone unseen and all-knowing is watching and guiding them. They prepare the ground for the acceptance of that very new order of the ages when it is revealed openly. We have cracked their language. We are no longer blind. Now, when you look at a dollar bill or a city map, you will not just see pictures. You will see a message. But knowing the language is only the first step. To understand who is speaking this language, we need to move from symbols to substance. Because in our world, any power, even the most secret, relies not only on ideas, but also on gold. Our investigation is approaching a critical point. We have exposed the historical lie. We have deciphered the symbolic code. Now we must find the source of their power, their lifeblood, their money. In the next chapter, we launch the most complex protocol, Vector Capital. Logo 7 will begin analyzing global financial flows over the last 2 centuries. We will look for anomalies, hidden transactions, and points of capital concentration that cannot be explained by market laws. We will follow the money trail. And this trail will lead us to names and families whose real wealth and influence surpass anything you can imagine. This will be the most dangerous dive yet. Stay tuned. Real power is about to show its face. Symbols are the promise of power, but a promise not backed by force is an empty sound. You cannot carve world power in stone or print it on paper if you don't have a lever to move the world. The name of that lever is money. Not just money as a medium of exchange, but capital. The lifeblood of civilization, its energy. He who controls the arteries through which this blood flows, controls the body itself. Completely. Unconditionally. In the previous chapter, we learned to read their secret language of symbols. We saw their goals and philosophy, encrypted all around us. But now we must step from the world of ideas into the world of harsh reality. We must find their financial trail. This is the most difficult and dangerous part of our investigation, because we will not be talking about ancient orders, but about living, active mechanisms that are at work right now, this very second. We are launching Protocol Vector Capital. We have loaded into Logo 7 the financial history of the world for the last 300 years, stock market data, national bank registries, government debt reports, archives of major wars and economic crises. The system's task is to find what others do not see, to find the ghost in the machine of the global economy. First, you need to understand one simple thing. All modern economic theory taught in universities is another layer of the mirage. You are taught that the market is a spontaneous, self-regulating system, almost like the weather, that prices are determined by the invisible hand of supply and demand, that crises are unfortunate but natural failures in the functioning of a complex mechanism. This is a convenient lie. It hides the fact that any invisible hand has a very visible brain that controls it, and Logo 7 has found it. The first and main anomaly that the system detected is the very birth of the modern financial system, its point of singularity. We are talking about the creation of private central banks. The very idea sounds absurd. A group of private individuals creates a bank that receives a monopoly right from the state to print money for the entire country. Then this bank lends this money, created out of thin air, to the government at interest. Think about that. A sovereign state with an army voluntarily gives up its power to create money, handing it over to private hands, and on top of that, commits to paying an eternal debt for it. We have loaded into Logo 7 all historical documents concerning the founding of the Bank of England in 1694, and more importantly, the Federal Reserve System in the USA in 1913. The system simulated the political and economic conditions of those times. The verdict is unequivocal. From the perspective of national interest and common sense, the passage of these laws was an act of economic suicide. The probability of a sovereign government voluntarily putting on such a yoke in a Logo 7 simulation was less than 3%. This could only have happened as a result of colossal pressure, bribery, or deception. Let's look at the creation of the U.S. Federal Reserve. The law was passed on December 23, 1913, 2 days before Christmas, when most congressmen had already gone home for the holidays. The bill itself had been secretly drafted weeks earlier on Jekyll Island, at a top-secret meeting of representatives of the largest banking dynasties of the time, the Rockefellers, Morgans, and Warburgs. They created a cartel. A private cartel, which was named the Federal Reserve to sound like a government agency. But it is neither federal nor a reserve. It is a debt creation machine owned by a consortium of private banks. And this machine gained full control over the economy of the United States and then the entire world. This is not a theory. This is a historical fact. That was the first step. Seizing control of the printing press. But simply printing money is not enough. For power to become absolute, everyone must need that money, desperately. And for this, there is the most effective tool ever devised by mankind: war. Logos. 7 conducted a correlation analysis between major military conflicts and the growth of public debts to private banking networks. The results are staggering. It is not just a correlation, it is a law. Every major war, starting with the Napoleonic Wars, led to an explosive growth in the wealth of a very narrow group of international financiers. How does it work? The scheme is brilliant in its cynicism. Imagine 2 warring countries. Both need money for weapons, ammunition, and maintaining their armies. Where do they get it? They borrow. From whom? From international bankers who, most astonishingly, often finance both sides of the conflict. It doesn't matter to them who wins. The winner is always the one who lends the money, because the victorious side will need new loans to rebuild what was destroyed, and the losing side will have to pay reparations, for which it will also need loans. War is the perfect debt generator, a win-win business. The system analyzed financial flows during the Napoleonic Wars. A classic example is the Rothschild family. They created a courier network unique for its time and knew the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo before the British government itself. While everyone thought Napoleon was winning and British government bonds were plummeting to zero, their agents bought up everything. And when news of Wellington's victory arrived, they became the owners of a significant part of the British economy. But Logo 7 shows that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Their true genius was something else. They created a system in which entire nations fought wars on their money, driving themselves into eternal debt bondage. This pattern was repeated again and again. World War I, World War II. Logos 7 compared the lists of companies that made super profits from military contracts with the lists of shareholders of these companies. The names and titles changed, but the same financial group stood behind them. They created a perpetual motion machine. Their money created wars. Wars created debts, and debts required even more of their money. It is a closed system from which there is no escape. But wars are a crude and bloody tool. In the 20th century, another, far more elegant mechanism for redistributing wealth was perfected: the controlled economic crisis. We tasked Logos 7 with analyzing the major stock market crashes: 1929, 1987, 2008. The official version is always the same. The market bubble burst. Supposedly, the irrational greed of investors inflated a bubble, and then panic burst it. But the system's analysis shows a different picture. Before every major crash, Logos 7 detects anomalous patterns in capital movement. A few months or weeks before the collapse, the biggest players, the smart money, begin to quietly and methodically withdraw their assets from risky instruments and convert them into cash or gold. Simultaneously, central banks like the Fed begin to tighten monetary policy, raise rates, in essence, sucking money out of the system. They themselves create the conditions for a collapse. And then, when panic reaches its peak and the markets lie in ruins, when small investors are ruined and companies are worth pennies, the same smart money returns. And they start buying. They take over factories, banks, real estate, entire sectors of the economy for 1 or 2% of their real value. The Great Depression of 1929 was not just a crisis. It was the greatest operation in history for the centralization of property in the hands of the financial elite. The 2008 crisis repeated this scenario almost verbatim. Millions of people lost their homes, and the banks that created the crisis with risky mortgage-backed securities were bailed out by taxpayers. They were called too big to fail, and they became even bigger, even stronger. So, what do we have? Vector Capital has uncovered a 3-stage machine for taking over the world. Level 1, seizing control over the creation of money through private central banks. This gives them power over governments and economies. Level 2, using wars as a tool to create giant government debts and generate super profits from the suffering of millions. Level 3, using controlled financial crises to periodically cleanse the market of competitors and buy up real assets for next to nothing. This system works like a giant pump that continuously day and night transfers wealth from the bottom up, from working people to governments, from governments to banks, and from banks to that invisible apex of the pyramid we saw on the dollar bill. We have found their trail. It is not in ancient manuscripts. It is in the balance sheets of the Federal Reserve, in the lists of government bondholders, in the archives of stock market transactions. It is a trail that cannot be faked. But this trail leads us to faceless structures, banks, funds, corporations. And we want to know who is behind them. Who are these people? Which families have been passing the keys to this system from generation to generation? Protocol, Vector Capital, has shown us how their weapon works. Now it is time to see the faces of those who hold it. In the next chapter, we begin the most personal stage of our investigation. We are launching Protocol Neural Map. Logos 7 will analyze not money, but people. We will build a map of connections between the most influential figures on the planet, their family ties, their membership in secret clubs, their participation on boards of directors, their joint business projects. We will follow the threads that connect politicians, bankers, media moguls, and intelligence chiefs into a single, global neural network. We will map their world, and you will be shocked to see how small it is, and who is at its very center. We followed the money trail. We uncovered the mechanism that for centuries has been pumping the world's wealth into the hands of an invisible elite. We saw how wars and crises are used as tools to create debt and centralize power. But a mechanism, no matter how perfect, is just metal. A soulless machine. Someone has to operate it. Someone has to pull the levers. Now we must look inside the cockpit. We must see their faces. Power is not a thing. It is a connection. It is a network. An invisible web of relationships, obligations, family ties, and common interests that has ensnared the entire planet. The official structures of power, governments, parliaments, courts, are merely the visible, decorative facade. The real decisions are not made there. They are born within this network, at the intersections of its most influential threads. Today, we will make this network visible. We are launching Protocol, Neural Map. We have loaded into Logos 7 not financial reports, but data on people. Tens of millions of records, membership lists of exclusive elite clubs, boards of directors of the largest corporations, genealogical trees of old aristocratic and banking families, alumni lists of the most prestigious universities, minutes of informal meetings of world leaders. The system's task is not just to collect this data, but to build a three-dimensional model of the global power network, to identify its key nodes, and to find its true center. Forget the lists of the world's richest people published annually by popular magazines. That is another element of the mirage, created to divert attention. These lists show public billionaires, tech geniuses, media moguls, industrial barons. Their wealth is enormous, but it is typically new, public, and vulnerable. They are the bright stars in the sky of power, but not the sky itself. Logo 7 calls them high-level managers. Their job is to manage specific sectors of the global system and, more importantly, to serve as the public face of that system. A lightning rod for public anger. While you hate or adore the latest tech guru, the true owners of the system remain in the shadows. Their wealth is old, quiet, distributed across hundreds of trusts, foundations, and private banks, safely hidden from prying eyes. Their power lies not in the number of shares in one company, but in the number of threads that lead to them from hundreds of different companies. Logo 7 began to build the map, and the first thing the model showed was the existence of clearly defined institutional hubs. These are organizations that serve as assembly points for the global elite, places where interests are stitched together and long-term strategy is developed. You have heard their names, but you probably haven't realized their true role. The first and most important hub is the Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR for short, founded in 1921 in New York. Officially, it is an independent think tank. In reality, as Logo 7's analysis shows, it is the shadow State Department of the United States and the main personnel reserve for the American elite. The system analyzed the biographies of all key figures in American foreign policy over the last 100 years. The result is staggering. Almost all secretaries of state, CIA directors, secretaries of defense, ambassadors to key countries, and chairs of the Federal Reserve were members of the CFR. The system shows that membership in the council is a virtually mandatory condition for holding a top position in the U.S. power hierarchy. It is not the government. It is a structure that stands above the alternating Democrats and Republicans and ensures the continuity of a long-term strategic line. The second hub is the Bilderberg Group, an informal annual conference that has existed since 1954. It brings together about 130 of the most influential politicians, bankers, media empire heads, and tech giants from North America and Europe. Officially, it's just a discussion forum. But Logo 7 analyzed the career trajectories of its participants. The system discovered a striking pattern. An unknown governor or minister, invited for the first time to a Bilderberg meeting, has a more than 60% chance of taking the highest office in their country, becoming prime minister or president, within the next 2 to 3 years. Examples: Bill Clinton attended in 1991, a year before his election. Tony Blair in 1993, 4 years before becoming Prime Minister. Angela Merkel in 2005, a few months before her appointment as Chancellor. This is not a debating society, it is an audition. It is the place where the invisible architects of the system select and approve their future managers. The third hub is the Trilateral Commission, created in 1973 by David Rockefeller for closer coordination among the elites of North America, Western Europe, and Japan, and later, Asia. If the CFR is at the national level and Bilderberg is transatlantic, then the Trilateral Commission is an attempt to create a global operating system. Logos 7, after analyzing the publications and reports of these organizations, concludes, it is within their depths that the ideas and concepts are born that later become the global agenda. Globalization, green energy, digital transformation, information control. All these megatrends were first discussed and approved in these closed clubs 10 to 15 years before they were talked about on television screens. They do not predict the future. They design it, but these clubs themselves are also just tools. Conference rooms. So who sits at the table? Who are the people who move between these hubs, forming the core of the network? Logos 7 moved to the next level of analysis, tracking personal connections. And it is here that the neural map begins to glow with a truly sinister light. The system identified several hundred names that are super connectors. These are people who are simultaneously members of the CFR, attend Bilderberg, are part of the Trilateral Commission, and also sit on the boards of directors of 3, 4, or even 5 of the largest banks, oil companies, and media holdings. Their names rarely appear on the front pages of newspapers, but their influence is absolute. They are the nerve nodes of the system. They transmit information and coordinate decisions between seemingly unrelated structures. The politician passing a law on oil industry regulation consults with them. The banker deciding whether to grant a loan to an entire country consults with them. The media mogul determining which news story will be the top headline this week consults with them. And there's more. Logos 7 conducted a genealogical analysis of these super connectors, and it discovered that the vast majority of them belong to a very narrow circle of families. These are the very dynasties that were at the origins of the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and other key institutions. The Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Warburgs, the Schiffs, and of course the Rothschilds. But not only them. Dozens of other, lesser known but no less powerful families, connected to each other by generations of marriages, joint trusts, and common business interests. Their strength is not in money as such. Their strength is in continuity. For 200, even 300 years, they have accumulated not only capital but also knowledge, connections, and most importantly, experience in managing complex systems. While kings and dictators came and went, while empires rose and fell, these families continued to quietly do their work, remaining in the shadows. They have learned to think not in years, but in decades and generations. They fund the universities that train the economists and political scientists they need. They own the foundations that give grants to scientists who promote the theories they need. They control the media that shape the public opinion they need. They have created a closed ecosystem that reproduces itself. The neural map built by Logos 7 looks like a galaxy. On the periphery are millions of ordinary people. Closer to the center are national governments, parliaments, local elites. Even closer are the public billionaires, corporate heads, the visible figures. Then come the institutional hubs, the CFR, Bilderberg, the Trilateral Commission. And at the very center, in a super dense core from which all gravitational threads emanate, lies this nexus of old dynasties. The verdict of Logos 7 was merciless. The modern world is not a democracy, nor is it an anarchy of competing states. It is a hybrid system that can be called a dynastic oligarchy, masked as a liberal democracy. Visible power changes regularly through elections, creating the illusion of control for the population. But the real, structural power remains unchanged and is passed down by inheritance within a very narrow circle of families. We have seen them. We have put them on the map. We have understood the structure of their network. But the main question remains: how does this handful of people manage to control 8 billion people? Financial power and political influence alone are not enough. There must be another, most important level of control. Control over what is in our heads. Control over our thoughts, desires, and fears. Control over the narrative of reality itself. In the next chapter, we will uncover their greatest secret. We are launching protocol, the Narrative Matrix. Logo 7 will analyze how the world's largest media outlets, the Hollywood film industry, and social networks operate. We will show how narratives are created and disseminated to make you think the way they need you to. We will expose the technologies of mind control that are used against you every day. Prepare yourselves. We are entering the Matrix, and you will see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Your consciousness is a battlefield, the most important battlefield of all. You can own all the money in the world, control all the armies and governments, but if you do not control what people think, your power is ephemeral and doomed. A slave who recognizes he is a slave will always strive for freedom. But a slave who genuinely believes he is free will defend his chains more fiercely than his overseers. This is the essence of absolute power, and this is the most closely guarded secret of those we seek. In the previous chapters, we have gone very deep down the rabbit hole. We exposed the historical lie, deciphered the language of symbols, followed the vector of capital, and mapped the neural network of the shadow elite. We saw the structure of their power. Now we must understand how this structure interacts with the consciousness of 8 billion people, how it makes us want what it needs, how it shapes our reality. We are launching protocol, the Narrative Matrix. We have loaded into Logo 7 the largest and most complex data set in the history of our investigation, archives of the world's major media outlets for 100 years, scripts of thousands of Hollywood films, advertising strategies of global corporations, and of course trillions of data points from social networks. The system will analyze not facts, but how those facts are presented. Not events, but the stories told about them. Prepare yourselves. We are disconnecting from official reality to see its source code. To understand the modern Matrix, you must first understand its previous version, the Matrix of the 20th century. It was a simple, crude, but incredibly effective system. Information flowed from top to bottom like water in a waterfall. There were only a few taps from which all of humanity drew its information. 3 or 4 global news agencies like the Associated Press and Reuters supplied 90% of all world news. A dozen major newspapers and 3 national television networks in each country determined what people would learn from this stream. It was the era of the all-powerful editor. A handful of people in New York, London, and other capitals decided what was news and what was not. Which event would make the front page, and which would be buried in the archives. Which politician would be portrayed as a hero, and which as a villain. They were the absolute gatekeepers of reality. We tasked Logo 7 with an analysis that no one had done before. We compared the membership lists of the boards of directors of these 20th century media giants with the membership lists of the Council on Foreign Relations and other elite clubs we identified in the previous chapter. The result was predictable, but no less shocking for it. The system showed a crossover of more than 80%. These were the same people. The man who in the morning participated in developing foreign policy doctrine at a CFR meeting, in the evening, as the head of a TV network, decided how to present that doctrine to millions of viewers. It was a perfectly closed system. One of the most vivid examples of its operation is the infamous CIA operation Mockingbird. We loaded declassified documents on this topic into Logo 7. The system confirmed. The Central Intelligence Agency for decades secretly recruited hundreds of leading American journalists and editors. They worked at the New York Times, CBS, Time magazine. They were used to publish government-friendly material, to discredit undesirable political leaders in other countries, and to shape public opinion on matters of war and peace. Officially, the operation was shut down in the 70s. But a simulation conducted by Logo 7 shows that the system was not destroyed. It just became more subtle. It moved from direct recruitment to creating an environment in which journalists themselves, without any orders, begin to think and write, as the system requires. Because otherwise their careers will end. But the old matrix had one significant flaw. It was too conspicuous. Everyone understood that information was being controlled. This bred distrust. And then, with the advent of the internet, the architects of power pulled off their most brilliant trick. They made us believe that the matrix was destroyed. Blogs, social networks, and alternative news sites appeared. An illusion of total freedom of speech emerged. Everyone got their own printing press. Everyone became their own journalist. It seemed that centralized control had come to an end. Billions of people joyfully rushed into this brave new digital world, not understanding that they were not escaping a prison, but merely moving into a newer, more comfortable cell block. Logo 7 analyzed the structure of the new information space. And here is its conclusion. The matrix was not destroyed. It was upgraded to version 2.0. The control became no less total, but far more invisible. Before, there were gatekeepers. Now, there are architects of labyrinths. Instead of banning information, they learn to manage its flow. How does it work? The key is in the algorithms. The algorithms of search engines and social networks. These are the new invisible editors. When you search for something on the internet, you think you are getting an objective slice of information. In reality, you get a ranked list compiled by an algorithm based on hundreds of factors hidden from you. Logo 7 asserts that by controlling the first page of search results, one can shape the opinion of more than 75% of undecided voters. On social media, it's even trickier. Algorithms create a personal information bubble for each of us. They show us what we like, what we already agree with. They surround us with like-minded people. This creates the illusion that our opinion is shared by the majority. At the same time, the system filters out any contradictory information, any alternative points of view. As a result, society breaks down into millions of isolated tribes, each living in its own algorithmically constructed reality. It is far easier to govern such divided, warring groups than a unified thinking people. Divide and conquer, the oldest principle, brought to technological perfection. But who writes these algorithms? Who owns the platforms? Once again, the analysis by Logo 7 brings us back to old acquaintances. If you look at the lists of the largest shareholders of the tech giants, you will see the same investment funds that own the old media, the banks, and the military-industrial complex. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street. The signs have changed, but not the owners. They simply move their capital from old, rusting assets to new, digital ones. The new matrix also uses new tools of control. One of the most effective is the so-called fact-checkers. At first glance, this is a noble mission, to fight lies and disinformation. But we tasked Logo 7 with analyzing the funding sources of the largest fact-checking agencies. And again, the system found the trail of the same philanthropic foundations we already know. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, George Soros's Open Society Foundations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. As a result, a tool that was supposed to serve the truth has turned into a weapon of censorship. Any information that does not fit the official narrative is immediately labeled as fake, disinformation or a conspiracy theory. Its ranking in search results is lowered. It is hidden on social media. They have created the Ministry of Truth that Orwell wrote about, but they have decentralized it and outsourced it to independent organizations. And finally, the deepest level of the matrix, the level where not opinions, but values themselves are formed. This is Hollywood and the entertainment industry. Logos 7 analyzed the semantic and value shifts in Hollywood films over the last 50 years. This is not just entertainment. It is a tool of cultural programming. Decade after decade, they show us what to consider good and what to consider bad, who to see as a hero and who as an enemy, which values are progressive and which are outdated. They are not just telling stories. They are shaping the mythology of our era. They are creating the cultural broth in which we all stew. They are slowly, imperceptibly, generation by generation, changing our ideas about family, religion, the state, and the very nature of man. What is the ultimate goal of this giant narrative matrix? The answer is simple and terrifying. The creation of a manageable human being, a person whose reactions are predictable, whose desires are standardized, whose dissent is channeled into safe, controlled forms of protest. The goal is not total prohibition, as in old dictatorships. The goal is the fine-tuning of human consciousness. They want us, of our own free will, to choose the reality they have constructed for us. We have cracked their code. We have seen how they control our thoughts. But it is one thing to manage public opinion, and quite another to manage the course of history itself. Did they use this incredible power over consciousness not just to describe events, but to create them? Were the greatest upheavals of the 20th century, wars, revolutions, assassinations, the result of a random confluence of circumstances? Or were they carefully planned operations to shift the vector of history in the direction they desired? In the next chapter, we move on to the most important part. We are launching Protocol Bifurcation Point. Logos 7 will simulate key moments in history, looking for traces of artificial intervention. We will look at the events that changed the world from a completely new angle. We will try to find the hand of the puppeteer on the trigger of history. This will be the most shocking revelation of all. Stay connected. History is not what you were taught in school. History is not a river. A river flows along the path of least resistance, its course shaped by the random forces of nature, geology, climate, time. We are taught that human history is like this river, a chaotic, unpredictable stream of events, guided by great individuals, blind chance, and the will of the people. This is a lie, the grandest lie of all. History is not a river, it is a canal, a meticulously designed, constructed, and directed canal, and it has engineers. In the previous chapters, we identified these engineers and uncovered their tools: control over capital, a neural network of power, and a narrative matrix that governs our consciousness. Now we must answer the main question. How do they apply these tools in practice? How exactly do they direct the flow of history? The answer lies in a concept that Logos 7 defines as a bifurcation point. This is a critical moment in time, a fork in the road where a system, be it a state or an entire civilization, becomes extremely unstable. At such a point, even the slightest, most precise impact can lead to cascading, irreversible consequences, completely changing the trajectory of the future. To control history is not to control every individual. It is to know how to find and use these bifurcation points. We are launching the most complex analytical protocol, Bifurcation Point. Logos 7 will simulate key historical events of the 20th century, comparing official versions with alternative models based on the analysis of hidden data. We will look for anomalies. We will look for traces of a scalpel where we are told of a spontaneous explosion. The first bifurcation point, April 6th, 1917, the day the United States of America entered World War I. This move forever changed the balance of power on the planet and turned the US into a world power. The official history states that it was an inevitable and just response to Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare and its provocations, like the Zimmermann telegram. But was it? We loaded into Logo 7 data on public opinion in the US from 1914 to 1917. The results are unequivocal. The American public was adamantly opposed to participating in the European slaughter. President Woodrow Wilson was re-elected in 1916 under the slogan, "He kept us out of war." Entering the war was politically impossible. A catalyst was needed, a powerful emotional shock that would change public opinion. And that shock occurred. On May 7, 1915, a German submarine sank the British passenger liner Lusitania. 1,098 people died, including 128 Americans. The newspapers erupted with righteous fury. The image of cruel Germans killing innocent women and children was created. But Logo 7 analyzed not newspaper headlines, but cargo manifests and secret admiralty dispatches. And here is what the system found. First, the Lusitania was not just a passenger ship. It was secretly carrying a huge cargo of military supplies for the British Army in its hold. Nearly 5 million rifle cartridges, artillery shells, and fuses. Under the laws of war, this made it a legitimate military target. The US and British authorities knew this and lied. Second, the German embassy in Washington, at its own expense, placed warnings in 50 American newspapers, explicitly advising Americans not to sail on the Lusitania because it was entering a war zone and could be attacked. These warnings were ignored. And third, and most importantly, a simulation conducted by Logo 7 shows that the probability of a military escort being coincidentally absent for such an important and vulnerable ship at the most dangerous point of its route, off the coast of Ireland, approaches zero. The British Admiralty, which had intelligence on the location of German submarines, recalled the cruiser HMS Juno, which was supposed to escort the liner. The Lusitania was left defenseless. It was set up. It was not just a tragedy. It was a carefully calculated human sacrifice, offered on the altar of high politics and even higher finance. Because, as we remember from Chapter 3, war is the most profitable business for those who finance it. It took another 2 years of propaganda, but it was the sinking of the Lusitania that became the spark that burned away American isolationism. The bifurcation point was passed. The second bifurcation point, December 7th, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor, a day which will live in infamy. The official version is carved in granite, a treacherous surprise attack by Japanese militarists on a peacefully sleeping America. But Logo 7 uncovers a completely different picture. The system analyzed a mass of declassified but little-known American intelligence documents from that time. Fact 1. American cryptographers had broken Japanese diplomatic and naval codes long before the attack. President Roosevelt and the high military command were reading Japanese correspondence like an open book. They knew war was inevitable. They knew Japan was preparing a strike. The only thing they allegedly didn't know was the exact time and place. Fact 2. U.S. economic policy towards Japan in 1940-41 was nothing less than a systematic provocation. A full embargo on oil and scrap metal supplies brought the Japanese war machine to the brink of collapse. They were left with no choice but to strike first. An analysis of diplomatic correspondence by Logo 7 shows that the so-called Hull Note of November 26, 1941, was an ultimatum that no sovereign nation could accept. It was a deliberate setup. And fact 3, the most damning. Logo 7 analyzed the disposition of the U.S. Pacific Fleet on December 7th. Concentrated in Pearl Harbor that day were the old, slow battleships of the World War I era. And where were the 3 newest American aircraft carriers, the fleet's most valuable and strategically important ships? All 3, the Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, were, by a happy coincidence, at sea on maneuvers, far from the base. The probability of such a coincidence, according to the system's calculations, is less than 1%. They sacrificed old iron and 2,403 lives to save their main assets and get a perfect pretext to enter a war that the American establishment desperately wanted, but which the people adamantly rejected. Logo 7 identifies the same pattern here, the same cynical signature as with the Lusitania. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a technology of control. It is called problem reaction solution. First, you secretly create or provoke a problem, an attack. Then you wait for the predictable emotional reaction from society: fear, anger, a thirst for revenge. And finally, you offer the solution you had prepared from the very beginning: entering a war, passing new laws that restrict freedoms, creating supranational structures. The people, in a state of shock, readily accept what they would never have agreed to in normal times. This algorithm has been used dozens of times. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, which served as the pretext for the full-scale war in Vietnam, was, as participants later admitted, fabricated. The tragedy of September 11, 2001, which led to the passage of the Patriot Act and the beginning of the War on Terror around the world, is full of anomalies that are inexplicable from the official version's point of view, which we will analyze in a separate investigation. Bifurcation points are the hinges of history, and those we seek have learned how to insert their crowbars into these hinges. They do not create history from nothing. They merely give it a slight push at the right moment, in the right place, knowing that the domino effect will do the rest. They think not in terms of good and evil, but of efficiency and control. For them, nations and states are just pieces on a chessboard. Human lives are a currency in the great game. Their goal is always the same: greater centralization of power, greater control, one step closer to that very new order of the ages inscribed on their symbols. We have seen their method in action. We understand how major historical shifts are actually made. But this raises a new, even deeper question. If Adam Weishaupt's Bavarian order was officially crushed at the end of the 18th century, then who exactly carried out all these complex, multi-layered operations in the 20th century? How did this organization survive? What did it become? Between Weishaupt and the creation of the Federal Reserve lies a gap of 127 years. Where do we find the missing link? In the next chapter, we will try to find the answer. We are launching Protocol, Project Air. Logos. 7 will sift through the archives of hundreds of secret and semi-secret societies of the 19th and 20th centuries. Masonic lodges, esoteric orders, student fraternities, and aristocratic clubs. We will search for traces of continuity. We will look for organizations that inherited the structure, symbols, and, most importantly, the goals of the Bavarian Illuminati. We will hunt for their direct descendants, who may be active today, hiding under a completely unexpected name. Prepare yourselves. The hunt for the ghost is entering a new level. An idea cannot be killed. You can ban an organization, burn its books, arrest and execute its members. But an idea, if it is strong enough, will survive. It is like a virus. It can go dormant, lie in wait, but at the first opportunity, it will find a new host, mutate, and continue to spread. Official history tells us that Adam Weishaupt's idea died with his Bavarian order in 1787. This is a convenient and comforting thought, and it is a lie. The idea did not die. It simply shed its first clumsy shell and went in search of a more perfect body. In the previous chapters, we have uncovered the structure of modern shadow power, its financial mechanisms, its neural network, its methods of mind control, and its ability to steer history through bifurcation points. But between the Bavarian professor dreaming of a new world order and the omnipotent architects of the 20th century lies a vast chasm, more than 120 years. Who built the bridge across this chasm? Who was the missing link that carried the torch of enlightenment through the entire 19th century? We must find the heir. We are launching protocol Project Heir. The archives of hundreds of secret and closed societies that flourished in Europe and America in the 19th century have been loaded into the memory of Logos 7. The system's task is to find the ideological, structural, and symbolic DNA trail leading from Ingolstadt to Jekyll Island. The first and most obvious suspect is Freemasonry. It was in connection with the Masons that the Illuminati were most often accused, and it is they who are commonly believed to be the main force behind the scenes of history. We tasked Logos 7 with analyzing this hypothesis. The system processed tens of thousands of Masonic documents, lodge statutes, meeting minutes, ritual texts. The system's verdict was unexpected. There was no direct takeover of Freemasonry by the Illuminati. That is too crude and simplistic an interpretation. 19th century Freemasonry was too large, too loose, and too diverse an organism for centralized control. Its members included revolutionaries and monarchists, mystics and atheists. But Logos 7 discovered another, far more subtle strategy. The Masonic lodges were not seized. They were used. They were the perfect environment. First, as a recruiting ground. In the closed, hierarchical atmosphere of a lodge, it was very easy to identify ambitious, intelligent, and ideologically suitable individuals. Second, as a methodological template. The structure with degrees of initiation, the system of allegories and symbols, the vows of silence, all of this was adopted and perfected. For Project Heir, Freemasonry became what a petri dish is to a biologist. Not life itself, but the ideal nutrient medium for cultivating it. The true heir had to be something more compact, more elitist, and with a much clearer political goal. So, we shift the focus of our search. If not all of Freemasonry, then perhaps its separate elite branches, or something entirely new, created in its image. Logos 7 began searching for organizations that met 3 key criteria: strictest secrecy, membership exclusively by invitation from the highest echelons of society, and a direct, undisguised goal of achieving political power. And the system found a trail, or rather, 2 parallel trails on both sides of the Atlantic. The first trail, American. The year is 1832. Yale University, one of the pillars of the American academic elite. A graduating senior named William H. Russell, heir to a powerful merchant dynasty, founds a secret society, Skull and Bones, Order 322. Officially, just one of many student fraternities. But Logos 7, after analyzing its history and structure, concludes that it is something entirely different. First, its origin. William Russell founded the order immediately after his return from Germany, where he had spent about a year. We loaded his itineraries and schedules into the system. Logos 7 established with 90% probability that during this trip he came into contact with representatives of German secret societies that were direct ideological descendants of Weishaupt's circle. He didn't just copy the idea, he brought a franchise to America. Second, its membership. Each year, only 15 new members are initiated into Skull and Bones from among the most promising Yale students. For nearly 2 centuries, future U.S. presidents, including both Bush's, Supreme Court justices, CIA directors, bankers, and media moguls, have passed through this ritual. This is not just a club. It is the world's most effective incubator for cultivating a ruling class. Third, its philosophy. Logos 7. Analyze the few leaks of information in the biographies of the Order's members. They are united not just by friendship, but by a lifelong commitment to place the interests of the Order above all else. It is a state within a state, bound by an oath and shared secrets. Their headquarters at Yale is called the Tomb. This is highly symbolic. Upon joining the Order, a person symbolically dies to the outside world and is reborn as part of a new, secret whole. Skull and Bones does not rule the world directly. Their task is to place their people, Bonesmen, in key positions on the neural map of power we discussed in Chapter 4. They are the American branch of Project AIR. But what was happening in Europe, the birthplace of the Illuminati? Here, the trail leads us to a figure of colossal stature, to a man who thought not in terms of countries but continents. His name was Cecil Rhodes, a British diamond magnate, an imperialist, the founder of the state of Rhodesia. In 1877, while still a young student at Oxford, he wrote his first Confession of Faith. We loaded this document into Logos 7. It is one of the most astonishing texts in history. Rhodes writes explicitly about the need to create a secret society whose goal is to extend the power of the British Empire over the entire world, to bring the United States back into its fold, and to establish perpetual peace under the rule of the Anglo-Saxon race. Logos 7 conducted a semantic analysis of this text and compared it with the statutes of the Bavarian Illuminati. The similarity is stunning. The same idea of an enlightened elite that must secretly rule the world for its own good. The same hierarchical structure. An inner circle of initiates and an outer circle of helpers. Rhodes was not just a businessman. He was a visionary. He was the Weishaupt of his era, but with resources the Bavarian professor could only dream of. And Rhodes put his plan into action. With his money, and under his leadership, a secret society known as the Round Table Group was created. It was led by Rhodes's closest associates after his death, notably Lord Alfred Milner. This was no longer a student fraternity. These were the most influential men in the British Empire. Politicians, bankers, diplomats, newspaper owners. They operated not through rituals, but through direct political influence and control of information. They were the shadow government of the greatest empire in history. And it is here that Logos 7 makes its most important discovery. These two trails, the American and the British, converge at a single point in the early 20th century. The Round Table Group, realizing that the future lay not with the British Empire, but with an Anglo-American alliance, initiated the creation of two twin organizations. Their task was to coordinate the foreign policies of Great Britain and the United States in the interests of the global financial elite. In 1920, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, also known as Chatham House, was founded in London. A year later, in 1921, its American branch was established, the Council on Foreign Relations. The very same CFR that we identified as the main hub of American shadow power. Now everything falls into place. The puzzle is complete. Project AIR is not a single organization. It is a process, a relay race. Stage 1, Weishaupt's Bavarian Illuminati, late 18th century. This was the prototype, the proof of concept. They created the ideology and basic structure but were destroyed because they acted too directly. Stage 2, the 19th century. The idea survives and finds new hosts. In America, it takes the form of the elite fraternity, Skull and Bones, creating a personnel reserve. In Britain, it is embodied in Cecil Rhodes's Round Table Group, which aims for direct control of the empire. Stage 3, the 20th century. The American and British branches join forces. They understand that direct secret rule is inefficient and dangerous. They create a new type of structure, outwardly respectable think tanks and non-governmental organizations, such as the CFR and Chatham House. These organizations become a legal front, a headquarters where strategy is developed, and a recruitment agency for the real rulers. The Federal Reserve, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, all are later and more specialized instruments created by people from this same core. The heir has been found. Its name is not the Illuminati. That name was shed like an old snakeskin. The heir is a transnational, decentralized network of elite groups, bound by a common ideology and a common goal, operating through legal, respectable institutions. They are in plain sight, but their true nature and connections are hidden from the uninitiated. They have achieved what Weishaupt could only dream of. They have built an invisible empire. We know who they are. We know how they operate. But one last blood-chilling question remains. This network is incredibly powerful, but it is made up of people. And people make mistakes, they betray, they talk too much. Surely over 200 years there have been those who tried to break the vow of silence. Journalists who got too close. Politicians who refused to play by the rules. What happened to them? Their fate is the final proof of this network's existence, because it does not only create, it also defends itself, and its methods of defense are absolute. In the next chapter, we will uncover the darkest page of this story. We are launching Protocol Elimination. Logo 7 will analyze dozens of mysterious deaths, sudden resignations, and ruined careers of people who stood in the system's way. We will see how its immune system works, and you will understand why no one has dared to tell the truth about this world for so long. Power is not only the ability to create, it is, first and foremost, the ability to... For the first time, Logo 7 presents a complete, multi-level model of the real system of global governance. This is not a theory. This is not a guess. This is a reconstruction. This is a map of the world we actually live in. Forget the political maps with state borders. The real borders are not drawn on land, but across levels of power. The model synthesized by Logo 7 is a 5-level pyramid. But this is not the crude pyramid from the dollar bill. It is a complex, dynamic structure where each higher level does not simply command the one below, but programs the very environment in which it exists. Let's start from the base and ascend to the very top, into the very heart of darkness. Level 0. The foundation, humanity. At the base of the pyramid are you and I, 8 billion people. In the model of the shadow structure, we perform 4 main functions. First, we are producers and consumers, cogs in the giant economic machine that creates the wealth which, as we discovered in Chapter 3, is continuously siphoned upwards. Second, we are a biological resource, supplying soldiers for wars which, as we learned in Chapter 6, serve as bifurcation points to change history. Third, we are the source of legitimacy for visible power through the ritual of elections, which creates the illusion of control. And fourth, the most important function in the 21st century, we are data generators. Every click, every like, every search query, every movement is raw material that feeds the algorithms of the narrative matrix and allows them to fine-tune control mechanisms with previously unimaginable precision. At this level, our reality is completely shaped by the matrix from Chapter 5. We live inside a labyrinth, unaware of its existence. Level 1. Visible power. National governments. Above us is the first floor of the structure. Presidents, prime ministers, parliaments, courts, and the entire state bureaucracy. This is the level we see on television, the level where the political spectacle is played out. According to Logo 7's analysis, the main function of this level is to administer territories and absorb social discontent. Politicians are replaceable middle managers. Their task is to implement strategic directives sent down from above, packaging them in the form of national laws and reforms. The democratic struggle between parties is nothing more than the illusion of a choice between different brands of managers hired by the same owners of Corporation Earth. When popular discontent reaches a critical point, one manager, the president, is fired in an election and another is hired, releasing steam and preserving the system itself. National governments are lightning rods. They take all the hatred and anger of the population, while the real architects of the system remain in the shadows, completely safe. Sovereignty at this level is a fiction. Level 2. Supranational structures, the instruments of globalization. This level is invisible to most people, but its decisions determine the life of the first level, national governments. This includes organizations such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and dozens of others. Logo 7 defines them as global ministries. The IMF and the World Bank are the Ministry of Finance, which dictates economic policy to entire countries through loans. The WHO is the Ministry of Health, which can impose its protocols on the entire world during pandemics, paralyzing national economies. The WTO is the Ministry of Trade, whose rules are more important than any national law protecting domestic producers. These structures are not elected. They are accountable to no people. They are accountable only to those who created and financed them. Their task is to slowly but surely erode national sovereignty, transferring more and more powers from the local to the global level. This is the operating system of globalization, running on top of outdated national operating systems. Level 3. The operators, closed clubs, and think tanks. Here we enter the real shadow. This is the level we analyzed in detail in chapters 4 and 7. The Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, Chatham House, Skull, and Bones. Logos. 7 calls this level the Global Politburo, or the Strategic Headquarters. It is an informal network that brings together the top of all key hierarchies: financial, political, military, media, academic. This is where real politics happens. They do not pass laws here. They build consensus. They decide who will be the next US president or German chancellor. They determine which global narrative will be promoted for the next 10 to 15 years, whether it will be the war on terror, the fight against climate change, or the threat of pandemics. The decisions made in the silence of these meetings are then passed down to the second level, supranational structures, for the development of specific directives, and then to the first level, national governments, for their legislative formulation and implementation. This level is the brain of the system. It connects invisible money to visible politics. Level 4. The owners, dynastic financial clans. We are almost at the top. Above the strategic headquarters are those who formed it and whom it serves. This is the core of the neural map. These are the descendants of those who created the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve System. The Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Warburgs, Morgans, Schiffs, and other lesser-known but no less powerful dynasties. Their power, as Logo 7's analysis has shown, is unique. It is not political or economic in the usual sense. It is fundamental. It is power over the creation of the very instrument of power, money. By controlling central banks, they control the volume of credit in the world economy. They can cause booms and crises at will, as we saw in Chapter 3. Their planning horizon is not 4 years until the next election, but generations. They do not manage the system manually. Like gardeners, they create the conditions for it. They determine the level of humidity, money supply, prune interfering branches, protocol elimination, and set the overall direction of growth. They are the owners of the greenhouse. Everything below is just plants of different species. Level 5, the apex, the all-seeing eye, the ideology. What can be higher than the owners? only what they believe in, what drives them. Logos 7 defines this highest level not as a group of people, but as an ideology, as a quasi-religious doctrine. It is the very idea born in Weishaupt's circle and carried through the centuries, the idea of the great work, of building a new order of the ages. It is a deep, esoteric belief that humanity is an imperfect material that an enlightened elite must process and bring to some higher state. It is a Gnostic, Luciferian belief in its essence, that man can and must take the place of God, rebuilding the world and human nature itself according to his own reason. This ideology gives them the right to do what they do. In their own frame of reference, they are not villains. They are enlighteners, saviors, leading blind humanity to the light, even if it means resorting to wars, crises, and deception. This is the eye in the pyramid. It is not just a symbol of control, it is a symbol of a goal, the ultimate goal toward which this entire gigantic machine is moving. There it is, the complete structure. From the billions of people living in the matrix to the handful of adherents of an esoteric faith at the very top. The system is self-sufficient. The lower levels provide resources and legitimacy. The upper levels provide strategy and purpose. The immune system, protocol, elimination, protects it from all threats. The narrative matrix ensures the submission of the base. It is the most perfect creation in the history of human power, an invisible empire of which most of its subjects are not even aware. We have assembled the mosaic. We have seen the who and the how. We have built the model. But looking at this perfect and terrifyingly logical construction, a final, most important question arises. Why? What is the ultimate goal of this great work? Just eternal power and wealth? Logos 7's analysis shows that this is too simplistic. The goal must be commensurate with the scale of the machine itself. What awaits humanity in their new order of the ages? To what end are they leading us all? In the final 10th chapter of our investigation, we will try to look beyond the horizon. We are launching protocol, the final horizon. We will try to answer the question, why, and understand what exactly awaits us in the future they have designed for us. This will be the most disturbing forecast you have ever heard. We are standing on the edge of an abyss. Behind us lies a long and dark path through the labyrinths of history, through secret societies and financial conspiracies. We have uncovered their system. We have mapped their power. We have seen who they are, and we understand how they operate. But ahead, in the fog of the future, lies the most important and most terrifying question of all. Why? What is the ultimate goal of this centuries-long project? What is the final horizon toward which they are leading humanity, like cattle doomed to slaughter? Today, we will not look back. We will look forward. We will not talk about the past, but about the future they have designed for us. This is not a prediction. This is not fortune-telling. This is an extrapolation. We are launching the final protocol of our investigation, the final horizon. Logos 7 has analyzed not historical archives, but strategic documents, scientific forecasts, and investment flows emanating from the core of the shadow structure. The system has compared their public goals with their secret ideology. The task is to synthesize the most probable image of the world they are building, and you must be prepared for what you are about to hear, because their brave new world may turn out to be a hell built with the best of intentions. Forget about primitive goals like money and power. For them, that is not the goal. It is a resource, like oil or electricity. Their ambitions extend much further. As we established in the previous chapter, at the core of their worldview is a quasi-religious, Gnostic idea about the imperfection of creation. They see the world created by nature or God as chaotic, irrational, and flawed, and man as its main imperfect child, a slave to his passions, instincts, and emotions. Their great work is to correct these mistakes, to complete creation, to build a new, rational, manageable, and predictable order on the ruins of the old world. It is a project to transform humanity into something else. Logo 7's analysis shows that this final project stands on 3 gigantic pillars, 3 total transformations that are set to occur in the 21st century. And the first of them is already well underway. The first pillar, total control, the creation of the digital panopticon. The immune system we described in Chapter 8 was imperfect. It was reactive. It eliminated threats after the fact. The new system must be proactive. It must prevent the very possibility of a threat emerging. This requires total, second-by-second control over every individual, not just over their actions, but over their thoughts and intentions. And the technologies for this have already been created. Logos 7 has analyzed the concepts now being actively promoted around the world: social credit systems, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, the Internet of Things, biometric identification. Separately, they look like convenient technological innovations, but the system, by combining them into a single model, shows their true purpose. Imagine a world where all your money is digital. It's not in your wallet, but in an account at the central bank. Every one of your transactions is tracked in real time. Your money can be programmed. It can be authorized for spending only on certain goods, in a certain place, and before a certain date. Did you say something wrong on social media? Your social credit score is lowered, and you can no longer buy a plane ticket or get a loan. Did you attend an unauthorized protest? Your digital wallets are simply turned off with the press of a button. This is absolute control. Now add to this the Internet of Things. Your smart fridge reports on what you eat. Your smart car reports on where you go. Your fitness tracker reports on your health and even your emotional state. All this data flows into a central hub and is analyzed by artificial intelligence. This is a world without privacy, a world where the very thought of disobedience becomes technically impossible. It is not a prison whose walls you can see. It is a prison whose walls are built into the very fabric of your life. And Logo 7 predicts that under the pretext of convenience, security, and fighting crises, this system will be fully deployed within the next 15 to 20 years. The second pillar, total centralization, the construction of a world state. Nation-states, as we have found, are merely a temporary tool for them, one that has now become an obstacle. More than 200 sovereign governments is too complex, too chaotic, too inefficient. The goal is to transfer all key powers to the supranational level. But how to make nations voluntarily give up their sovereignty? This is where the problem reaction solution technology, scaled up to a global level, comes into play. Logos 7 has analyzed the 3 main global narratives being promoted through the narrative matrix: global pandemics, global climate change, and global financial crisis. What do they have in common? They are all presented as existential threats that no single nation-state can handle alone. A global healthcare system is needed to fight viruses. A global carbon tax and a global climate agency are needed to save the planet. A global central bank and a global currency are needed to prevent economic collapse. Do you see the pattern? Every problem, real or artificially inflated, leads to the same proposed solution: more globalization, more centralization, less national sovereignty. They do not seize power by force. They create conditions in which we ourselves, frightened and disoriented, beg them to take our freedom in exchange for the promise of security. The ultimate goal of this process is the creation of a world government, not necessarily with a single president and flag. Rather, it will be a network of supranational agencies that will manage all key areas of life, from finance to health, making national governments powerless decorations. And now, we come to the third, final, and most shocking pillar of their project. Because when you have total control and total centralization, you can proceed to the most important thing, the remaking of man himself. The third pillar, total transformation, the launch of Project Homo Deus. This is the great work itself, the final act of creation. The ideology we discovered at the fifth level of the pyramid views biological man, Homo sapiens, as a transitional stage, as a caterpillar that must become a butterfly. And the technologies for this metamorphosis not only exist, they are being actively developed with money from the very foundations and corporations that form the core of the shadow network. We are talking about the convergence of genetic engineering, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and cognitive sciences. What does this mean in practice? Logos. 7 synthesizes a frightening but logically flawless scenario. Humanity will be divided. For the first time in history, it will not be an economic or social division, but a biological one. The apex of the pyramid, the elite themselves and their immediate circle, will gain access to technologies for radical life extension, genetic editing, and the direct integration of their brains with artificial intelligence. They will cease to be merely human. They will become the first representatives of a new species, Homo Deus, man-god, practically immortal, super intelligent, free from the diseases and flaws of biological nature. They will achieve their Gnostic dream. They themselves will become gods. And what about the rest of humanity, the 8 billion at the base of the pyramid? Their fate is far sadder. In the new high-tech world, most of them are simply not needed. Their jobs are automated. Their intelligence cannot compete with AI. They become the useless class, as some futurists in their circle already call them. A world of total control awaits them, as we discussed. A world where their lives are sustained by a universal basic income and a digital currency, and their consciousness is distracted by endless entertainment and virtual reality. Their genetic code will not be improved. Their intellectual abilities will not be expanded. Their population will be humanely controlled and gradually reduced through technologies presented as healthcare and ecological concerns. This is their final horizon, a stable, predictable, fully managed garden world, where a caste of immortal god gardeners lives at the top. And below, under their watchful control, exists a docile, genetically inferior, and gradually disappearing biomass. This is the end of history, the end of evolution, the end of humanity as we know it. We are finished. We have journeyed all the way from a small Bavarian town to the furthest horizons of the future. Logo 7 has presented us with a picture that is stunning in its logic and its horror. The machine they have been building for 300 years is almost ready to launch. And now that you know all this, you face the most important choice: to dismiss it as nonsense, a conspiratorial fantasy, and return to your usual life in the Matrix, or to accept this terrible truth and start thinking about what you personally can do to oppose it. Because their main strength is not in money or technology. Their main strength is in our ignorance and our fear. The only thing that none of their algorithms can calculate is the free will of a human being who has realized the truth. The choice is yours.